Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 25 of Duke's Download. And I'm so beyond thrilled to have a former presidential candidate, Andrew Yang, with us today. Someone who I think is one of the smartest people there is. And in fact, he just sent me a request to join. One moment. So excited. Hey there.
Yes, I have beamed into your Instagram. Hello.
Such an honor, seriously. Thank you so much for doing this.
No problem. My pleasure. I appreciate the fact that you did something awesome, which was run for office, and that you've been an activist trying to make things better. So, yeah, happy to join.
No, thank you. I mean, I've been such a huge admirer of yours since even before your campaign. But my mom and my dad are both huge fans of yours. And I think you may remember that I mentioned my godfather is Gavin de Becker, who's obviously a huge admirer and fan of yours as well. So.
Oh my gosh, I did not remember that. Wow, you have so many cool people around you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know he's been involved with your campaign, and no, so I've been doing this series, just chatting to people that I admire. I've interviewed Mark Takano and Jared Polis, and so I thought you'd be an incredible person to talk to, and kind of good timing considering the news that we got like a couple hours ago with Trump and the coronavirus relief bill, which is just terrible. But I know you tweeted about that. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that.
It's unconscionable that we're still talking about a bill that should have been passed months ago, in my view. I mean, we had one relief measure that was passed at the end of March. Benefits went out early April. A lot of those benefits have elapsed, and 82% of Americans think that we should have a relief bill, a new one. Economists all agree, and we just can't get it done because of a dysfunctional Congress and politics. And now the president has tabled any negotiations until after the election, which really makes no sense because people are suffering in real time. The economy is languishing in real time, and we're just shooting ourselves in the foot and compounding a terrible situation by failing to address the economic impact. There's so many people suffering everywhere, and they're angry and distressed, and we all should be angry on behalf of the American people that we're not doing more to help.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought it was so fascinating that after your campaign that UBI, I mean, obviously a much less comprehensive version of what you proposed, but the fact that that sort of became back in May the solution. And yet now they're not willing or able to continue giving people the help. And I know that there was a bill that you were pushing with Tim Ryan that would have sort of provided a much bigger framework and structure to continue these payments. What do you think? What do you think about the situation with that? I mean, obviously, if Biden's elected, do you think that specific bill is something that might get through Congress?
I certainly hope so. Tim and Roe's cash relief bill drew, I think, about 50 sponsors in the House. And then there was a similar effort in the Senate with Ed Markey and Bernie and Kamala around this $2,000 a month figure. The thing that I believe everyone can agree on, really even in both parties, is the need to have cash relief for the duration of the pandemic. And we're going to be digging out of this pandemic for months and months. And so I do believe we'll see a cash relief measure go out with the new Congress that may be based upon the current $2,000 a month bill that Tim and Roe have proposed. I hope so. But I believe some version is going to be necessary and will pass because the devastation is just too widespread and the economy is not mending itself in the way a lot of optimists would hope.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And so I wanted to go back a little bit because I think your journey is so fascinating. The fact that, I mean, I know you were involved in the Obama White House as an ambassador, and I know that you went to law school and all that. But was running for office something that you even pondered when you were younger? When did that thought even come into your head?
It's a fun question, and James, because I had a list of life's goals that I'd made in my 20s, which, you amend. I mean, you don't know everything. But my wife, who I was dating at the time, saw the list, and it did not say run for office. What it did say was help elevate at least one candidate or figure. So I had in my mind's eye, I wanted to find someone like you, frankly, who is running for the right reasons, and that you wanted to get into office. But I did not think I would myself run, because frankly, it just did not seem like a wise thing to do. It's like where to me, a lot of it's around the policy. And so I thought to myself, if there's someone else who would enact the same policies I would enact, then great, let's just get them in there. And then, like, I could just help them. So that was my approach to it for a long time. And it was only when I started Venture for America and then ran it for a number of years that I concluded, I was like, you know what, we're going to need bigger changes. And even then, James, most people may not know this, but my first question was, is someone going to run on this? Is someone going to run on universal basic income? Mm-hmm. So I actually went around looking around and asking and saying, like, hey, is anyone going to run for president on universal basic income this time? Because someone really should. And then when I came up with a clear no, then I was like, all right, I guess I'll do it. So I'm not someone that has planned on running for office for a long time. I would not have run if not for Trump's victory, the need to promote universal basic income, and the fact that no one else was going to do it.
But you still, I mean, like, you had having gone to law school, I know, majored in poli-sci, and politics was something you were interested in. You just never thought it would be something that you might pursue as a career. Is that right?
I was always someone who followed and read about politics. It just seemed like something that you should be aware of. If you're interested in the world and you want to be mindful. So I've always had an interest for sure, but for a variety of reasons, I never thought of myself as a candidate.
I think that the reason that a lot of people of my generation really, the reason that you resonate with them is that I think there's a feeling out there amongst a lot of people that, politics, electoral politics has become sort of a less effective way of making a difference. I think a lot of people, as you have gotten involved in the nonprofit realm or trying to, create businesses that are socially and politically conscious. And you seem like you've always been the kind of person that, looked at other fields as sort of a more effective way of making a difference, but that you felt that, you made this decision, like, okay, I don't necessarily, and in other words, because you're an outsider, you're not someone that traditionally has been in the political field. That I think that was something that resonated with people. But like running for president, like what was your ideal goal in terms of before the campaign started? Like what did you hope to achieve by running?
I hope that I could accelerate the end of poverty, James, because I thought it was going to be necessary for us to adopt universal basic income. Mm-hmm. And the sooner we did that, the sooner we'd alleviate untold human misery that's totally unnecessary, in my view. I thought if I could accelerate the end of poverty and know that it was something that that I put my all into, then I'd be proud. Now that the campaign has ended, though, I'm still doing a lot of the same stuff. I'm still fighting for the same vision, though not as a presidential candidate at the moment. I'm not resting on the fact that, like, I think we sped things up. I mean, the needs are so dramatic and pervasive that now my goal is just to get it signed. So I'm endorsing candidates who are down ballot, who are for cash relief or universal basic income or a human-centered economy. I'm trying to help Joe and Kamala win because obviously we can't get anything done with Trump in office. And, I feel like that this leadership is corrosive in various ways. Mm-hmm. So right now my vision is to just keep on forging ahead and trying to get this done. I appreciate the fact that a lot of people Now, I'm probably not the people that follow you, honestly, and at this point, not the people that follow me. But the folks that are just like, oh, politics is a bad use of time. I understand it because it's been really difficult to follow sometimes, and it just makes you mad and depressed and all these other things. Uh, for me, right now, just the tough truth is that the biggest problems that face us are going to require government. In like, I wish it were not the case too. Like I too wish that we were in better position to address climate change and what's going on with the economy and a bunch of other things without the government. But we're going to need it to lead, even. And so when you get to that point, then you realize that you're going to have to engage politically. Certainly, the first thing I do say to people, though, is that the first thing you can do to help yourself is really just to help yourself. You know what I mean? Like, look out for your own mental health and physical well-being and your own relationships and your own spirit. And sometimes that includes turning off politics. Sometimes it includes turning off your screens. Like, I'm not someone who, it's like it's hard for us too sometimes, I'm in it, and even I'm like, oh, this stuff is pretty awful sometimes. So I certainly believe that if we're going to make meaningful progress on the biggest problems, we're going to have to engage politically. But I respect the balance that many people want to maintain. And there are times we have to get fired up and do everything, and then there are times where you probably should turn it off.
No, I think one of the really interesting things that President Obama said not too long ago is this idea that you have to choose one or the other. That there's this false idea that a lot of people have that the political system is so screwed up that I'm not even going to engage. I'm going to focus on protesting or whatever else. When in fact all of those things should work together. As he said during the George Floyd protests, the people that are out there protesting should also be registered to vote and voting and running for office. So I think this idea that that they're mutually exclusive, that direct action and philanthropic work, nonprofit work, all those things sort of tie in together, I think, and I think that's an important thing to remember.
No, I agree. I just want people to do positive things, and positive things can take different forms. It could be volunteering for a local org, it could be voting, it could be registering other people to vote, it could be helping out with a local candidate, it could be running for office at the very high end. And I also, just on that note too, it's like, I wouldn't expect or request that like everyone run for office.
It's not for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you have to find the way to contribute that makes the most sense for you.
Absolutely. One thing I've always found really interesting about you is that, like, my dad, for instance, was a Reagan administration official back in the 80s. And he's not a Trump fan, but he's always sort of been more on the libertarian sort of end of the spectrum. And it's so interesting to me that my dad, my mom, who was a big Bernie person, in 2016, like more on the socialist sort of side of the spectrum. And me, we're all sort of different in terms of what I think we would consider ourselves in terms of ideology. We're all big fans of yours, and I know you've never been one to sort of label yourself. I know you've said, you're non-ideological, but why do you think it is that people, of all, and I know a lot of Republicans, Trump people were considering voting for you had you won the nomination. Why do you think it is that sort of people from all different sides of the spectrum are supportive of you?
Well, I'm certainly appreciative of you and your family's support. And, one of the best things I ever heard on the trail was that people told me that I brought their family back together, or that like they made it so they could actually talk about politics over Thanksgiving, and everyone was cool. That was glorious to hear. I think that one of the reasons why people have different political alignments were attracted to my campaign is that my campaign's all about just helping people and families and communities flourish and do well. And that's something that I think we all should be able to support. And so there are times when the best way to do that is to stand back and let people create businesses and do their own things. And there are times when the right way to do that is for the government to actually support some of the things that we want to see. But that set of goals should be universal. And I do think that, unfortunately, there are a lot of institutions that benefit from pitting us in camps against each other, where it's like I'm a this, you're a that, or the rest of it. I mean, there's, and to your socialist capitalist thing, like, there has never been such a thing as pure socialism or pure capitalism in American history. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, even now when you say and we right now are very, 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 very hyper capitalist in particular ways. There's no one who would, like, at this point, adopt one extreme or the other in real life. And so, like, everything is about trying to figure out what the problems are and how to solve them. And I think that's something that we've lost, frankly, where now we're getting into strange battles of symbolism and food fights and terminology. When I was on the trail, I've had to navigate that a lot. But I find that most Americans.
Well, if I may just interject for 1 second, only to say that I think it's so fascinating, the concept of someone who is running as being non-ideological in the most ideological, polarizing time that we've seen in our country. I think that's why I'm sure I and a lot of other people felt like it was so refreshing, of a message.
You know what's funny too, James, is I think it was Ezra Klein or someone was like asking me about, he's like, hey, was that like a strategy? And I was like, not really a strategy. It's just sort of like the way I am, where I just show up and be like, what's the problem? Like, what are we upset about?
Yep.
School's gotten 2.5 times more expensive. Yeah, that's a problem, objectively. That's like a non-ideological, like, what's that? Technology is going to get rid of hundreds of thousands of call center jobs. That's a problem. And the things that I was talking about, it's like no one really cares about your political beliefs when the technology wants to come replace you. I mean, to me, climate change is like just scientific fact, where it's like, like Mother Nature doesn't care if you believe whether it's happening, like, So I just genuinely had that approach, and I think people were attracted to it. I think we need more of that kind of solutions orientation in our public life, where there was that op-ed. It wasn't an op-ed. It was like a piece by Nicholas Kristof in the Times about how America's in 28th place now, according to various measurements, including something like 31st in clean water. I mean, like, this is a disgrace if you're the richest country in the world. But right now, somehow we can make like an ideological battle out of that. It's like, what, you don't believe in? It's like, I don't believe in your numbers anymore. It's like, come on, it's like, what families? And part of this too, James, that when I was traveling the country, people are much more unified in real life than our media organizations would suggest, than our social media would suggest, than various labels would suggest. If you just get a group of random Americans together, like, they agree on 80-90% of things.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing, like, even within my own family, my dad and I, who ordinarily, have sort of very different perspectives on lots of different issues, that you were someone that, that we could all agree on, essentially. But also,
Andrew Yang, the great compromise candidate. It's like,
yeah, the great uniter.
We all can live with that guy. Yeah,
the great uniter.
Someone told me that story, and like in Iowa, where like I ended up their compromise candidate in the district, where like everyone was like, "Yeah, I'll settle for that."
No, definitely not settling. You're the uniter. You're bringing people together, as you said too. And relating to that whole conversation about labels and all that, like, even within the Democratic Party. I know I wrote an article. I write articles a couple times a month, and one of them I talked about the fact that, for instance, in Massachusetts, I supported Joe Kennedy for Senate, yet I also supported Alex Morris for Congress. It was endorsed by Justice Democrats, and I was like, I just don't understand why there's like this, constant, like, this idea of there being a battle between the Justice Democrats and establishment Democrats. I'm like, I don't necessarily even give that much thought to whether I'm a socialist or a capitalist, I think it's a big waste of time. Honestly.
It's not positive.
No.
And you endorsed, in my opinion, 2 outstanding human beings and candidates. Like Alex Morris, I endorsed him too. He's great. And I don't know Joseph Kennedy, but I have friends in common with him that love him, that think he's tremendous, and so I instinctively think that he's also just a great public servant. And so the fact that people have become so negative, even in a battle that, frankly, is between two folks who are both
Yeah.
were Dems, you know, like both were progressive in like just about every dimension.
Right.
So I agree with you. A lot of this stuff is holding us back.
And I mean, within the Democratic Party too. Like I didn't support Bernie, but as in his presidential runs, but I've always loved Bernie, and I love virtually all of the Democratic candidates. So I just don't understand why there's so much hate and so much like polarization even within the Democratic Party, especially when I think the candidates agree basically on 99% of the issues.
And part of it really was the media, where the media was like, "Ooh, let's figure out what the distinctions are between these folks."
Right.
I was a Bernie supporter in 2016, you know, and so then when I was running this time, there were a lot of Bernie supporters that would be like, very pro Bernie, which I was like, I get it. I was pro Bernie too. Like,
Yeah.
Bernie's great. And there were times when I get a little irritated because they'd be like, I'm pro Bernie, and then they'd like, frankly, like make shit up about me.
Right.
I'd be like, look, you can be pro Bernie and not be like, like super negative about
Right.
me or other candidates. I mean, like I like Bernie.
Right.
What's the beef?
Absolutely.
And I will say I was very, very proud when Bernie expressed his affection for me too. I felt like like I expected me to like him, and like I wasn't sure if the reverse would be true, but he's very positive towards me, and when I saw him at the next debate, I thanked him, and we had a nice moment.
I might be wrong, but it seemed like most of you got along pretty well. It seemed like maybe, as you said, it was the media, but also maybe some of the supporters in certain campaigns that were being sort of more negative towards some of the other candidates. But it seemed like you guys all got along pretty well up there on the stage.
Let's just say before the debates, like we'd all be in these scrums together, and people were very pleasant and collegial the vast majority of the time,
Right.
like then they'd go on stage, and sometimes it would seem a little bit more contentious, but then afterwards also, again, people very warm. So I agree with you. I think the Dems generally got along with each other, with a couple of exceptions that you can probably pick out.
I think I know the ones you're talking about. I mean, there were a few moments on the stage with certain candidates, but anyway, one thing I wanted to ask you about, I know that, after your campaign, you formed this nonprofit, Humanity Forward. And one of the issues that I actually didn't know that much about until I was reading about the issues that you guys are focusing on is this issue of data privacy, and the fact that, I live in California, obviously, and there's a proposition that you're involved with, Prop 24. Maybe you can talk a bit about that.
Now, right now, our data is getting sold and resold for tens of billions, even hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and we're none the wiser. So we're on Instagram Live right now. Love it. Instagram is part of Facebook. Facebook is making tens of billions of dollars a year, and we're all like, okay, well, it's free to us. But it's one of those situations where if you're not paying anything, then somehow you're being bought and sold, which is what's happening. Like we and our digital avatars and thousands of data points about us are getting sold to advertisers. And that's not great for not just getting bombarded with ads, but it's bad for our privacy. It's bad for our mental health. It's bad for democracy. It's certainly bad when you're in a situation where there are lots of folks that want to misinform us and can then target us with certain messages based upon something we clicked on, so they know that, ooh, like they like this, they're going to like this too. So we're trapped in like alternative versions of reality right now, except for the folks on this Instagram Live. You're all seeing the real thing. No, I'm kidding. So the question is, how can we actually start treating our data with the kind of dignity that we would expect from the offline world, where if someone was just camped outside your window and like looking in all the time, you'd be like, this is freaking creepy. What is going on? But we're essentially allowing digital versions of that.
Yep.
So Prop 24 is a major step forward where Californians are going to get a bunch of protections. Like you can turn off geo-targeting. If they mess with your data, then there can be actions taken against them. Kids get extra protections. A lot of the protections that Californians would get through Prop 24 already exist in the EU. where Europe, you know, you can kind of see like they've kind of got their acts together at a higher level. So they've buttoned up people's data and privacy rights. The US has not. And so now California is saying, let's protect Californians' data rights. And if this passes in California in November, vote for Prop 24. If this passes in November in California, I believe it will sweep the country because other states will look up and say, why is it that Californians have protections we don't have here in Illinois, Washington, Massachusetts, wherever? So this is a very important measure. It's one of a kind in the country. And as usual, California is in position to lead the way. Like you all are ahead on a lot of things. I think you're going to set a new high water mark for protection of consumer data.
I was so happy when I saw this was on the ballot. Have you seen The Social Dilemma yet on Netflix?
Yeah, required viewing. If you haven't
Yeah.
seen it, you should all watch it. I thought it was a very important film, and I know a lot of the people in that film because they're some of the folks that have been advising me on some of these data abuses that we're subject to.
I know we only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to ask you about, I know you're on Joe Biden's advisory council for small business and entrepreneurship. And, you know, I live in West Hollywood, which is a pretty small town. And we, you know, a lot of our, you know, businesses are, you know, small businesses that are being, you know, affected a lot by this pandemic. You know, there's 4, you know, LGBT establishments, bars that have closed that were real like institutions in the city. And I'm curious what you think, you know, can and should be done if Biden wins to try to help some of these small businesses around the country that are affected.
There are hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of businesses in the same boat, James. I just talked to Jose Andres, the chef, and he said that he thinks over 50% of independent restaurants will go out of business, never to return, without some kind of relief. So that's one reason why having the right leaders in Washington is going to be so important, because we need to try and make these business owners able to reopen their doors. And one of the problems with this business, like this situation, is that loans aren't really the answer. Like if I'm a restaurant owner and I'm just owing all this money because I've had to pay all these expenses for months and without any revenue, and then I show up and say, good news, I'm going to lend you money. It's like, well, that doesn't really help me because like it just means I have like this hole I'm never going to dig out of. So we need to try and make the incentives better for business owners to reopen, which is going to mean essentially forgiving a lot of the built up expenses and debt. We should be making landlords whole too. Like the pain is just getting passed around in different ways. And we have the capacity to do more. We're doing it now for these large corporations. You know, we're like bailing out airlines and cruise ship companies and the rest of it. We need to have a mechanism in place where the small business owner can get made, if not whole, at least close enough to whole where they can reopen. And one of the best ways to do this really would just be to put money back into our hands, because we're going to go and spend it at those establishments when they have a chance to reopen. Like right now, they might not be getting our money because, you know, it's like maybe we're still not going to go out and party, but you know, some of them will. You know, like some of the restaurants can survive, and then hopefully we can provide a path forward for the ones who like are right now on the edge. It's a terrible time. It's a terrible situation. I'm so angry about the lack of relief. But Joe and Kamala are committed to trying to give small business owners a path forward. I was a small business owner myself, so I'm very passionate about this. We have to do more. It's one reason why I said yes when they asked me, because like this is near and dear to my heart.
Well, so speaking of Joe and Kamala, do you feel good about, like, if you had to not predict, but do you feel good about the election? Do you think he's going to win? And also, not only do you think he's going to win, do you think, or are you worried about some of the talk that, you know, Trump has put out there about trying to challenge the results in court and, you know, through the electors system and all that? I mean, do you feel optimistic, or are you afraid of what's coming?
You know, I'm concerned about our ability to count votes quickly, to be able to declare results and winners quickly. But I'm very confident about the fact that millions of Americans are going to vote and want to turn the page. Like this has become a change election. There are polls that just came out today that people probably saw that have Joe up by 16 points post debate. You know, I mean, that debate was a horror show. Like, there were not many Americans who watched that were like, ooh, I want 4 more years of this guy. Like, he just seemed so petty and aggrieved.
Yeah.
And so I think we're well positioned to win big, frankly, and have people win in unprecedented locations where you don't think of Dems as being competitive. I mean, some of the most prominent examples, Lindsey Graham, freaking, he's in like a neck and neck race in South Carolina with Jamie Harrison. You know, who would have called that not that long ago? There's a Senate candidate in Alaska, Al Gross, who has a chance to win as well. Like, I mean, if you just ask your friends in California, South Carolina, Alaska, they're like, you know, like, you think of those places like pretty red.
Right.
Like, Dems or independents are competitive. So we've got a great opportunity if we just keep on putting the work in between now and election day. I feel very, very confident, though.
I mean, if it's anything close to 16 points, I mean, I find that hard to believe, only because, like, that would be like Reagan 1984, like, you know, 49 states kind of. But, you know, hey, you know, I mean, even if it's not 16 points, even if it's 8 or 10 points, that would be a wipeout. So, you know, hope and pray.
Yeah, I agree. You don't need 16, but like even half that would be a repudiation.
Right.
Yeah, I believe we're in a positive trajectory, and people are already voting. Like, over 3 million people have already voted. You know, I mean, like this race is baked, more or less. You know, you look around, like, people are looking for catalysts. That first debate was one of the last catalysts on the calendar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I just don't understand how, in his mind, you know, not that I think he thinks very clearly, but how Trump could think that would do anything to help win back the, you know, the suburban voters or whoever he was trying to target. Or, like, it just seemed like, if anything, every undecided voter was going to look at that and go, you know, there's no way I'm voting for this guy. You know.
Well, and that poll, again, it's a bit of an outlier. That poll that has Joe up by 16. I think the gender gap was something like 30 points. It was something like the men were virtually tied, and then women went for Joe and Kamala by like 30 points. So can you imagine how, like, women voters saw that debate? They were watching this being like, oh no, like this is not the guy.
He definitely doesn't make people feel like, oh, I feel safe and protected and, like, you know, warm and fuzzy. You know?
That guy was not a comforting figure.
No.
You know, like, if there were women voters on the fence, they were not like, oh, like, this is the guy.
He's so reassuring. Yeah, exactly. But no, just to on a final note, I know you've sort of hinted at things that you might consider in terms of your political future. I know at one time you were talking about maybe running for mayor of New York. I know there's been some talk about maybe Secretary of Labor if Biden wins. Where do you, not even necessarily what position you'd be interested in, but, like, what issues specifically? I mean, I know UBI, but, like, what would your ideal role encompass? Like, if you could come up with your ideal role, whether in a Biden administration or not.
My ideal role would be solving the problems I ran on, which would be humanizing the economy, universal basic income, trying to make it work for the people in West Hollywood and around the country. So there are certain roles that I'm more attracted to in that vein. If I can address some of the social media and technology issues, I would love to dig into that. So that we've got our work cut out for us, as you know, and a lot of people watching this. We have to rebuild in an epic fashion. Like, it's not going to be enough to win an election. I mean, the election is just going to be the beginning. Like, we have to win and then do the work. And we all can sense the fabric of this country has been getting torn apart for years. We have to try and reconstitute it. And unfortunately, the way these things work is that it's easier to degrade something than it is to rebuild it. You know, it's like easier to lose trust than to get it back. And to me, that's the challenge ahead, is that we have to reconstitute Americans' trust in each other, in ourselves, in our government. It's going to be a lot of work, and I just want to be able to contribute to it.
Well, thank you for leading the way. And so thank you so much, sir. Seriously, it's such an honor and a pleasure to talk to you.
It was great talking to you too. Again, I mean, I love the idealism that animates you and your desire to make the country better. I feel like that's the only reason I got into it too. So yeah, just great to connect. And let's push people to vote, vote, vote,
All right.
register to vote, and do some positive things in your community, whether they're political or not, because people need help right now.
Absolutely. Well, stay well, stay safe, and hopefully talk to you soon. Hopefully meet you in person one day. Not too
Yeah,
distant future.
would love that. I'd enjoy that a great deal.
And
Bye,
my mom and
everyone.
dad, by the way, have been commenting, leaving hearts and thumbs ups throughout the
Oh,
whole
that's so
interview.
nice of them. Yeah, they should be very. I mean, heck, you should be really proud of you. I mean, like you're like any parent's dream.
Well, that means a lot coming from you. Seriously. Thank you.
All right.
Have
No
a good
problem.
night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.